All right. Welcome. I have to laugh because Steffi and I were just talking about, how Zoom now is like, this meeting is being recorded. And I'm always like, good, the person didn't leave when they got the option. You're still here. Y'all, we're back. And I'm not going to say we're back for another weekly episode of Living a Bold Life because I have actually, the first thing I want to share is I'm shifting the cadence of these series a little bit. Actually, you might notice the week before there were no new episodes. I took a break. I went back to the drawing board. I wanted to see how it was feeling. And what I noticed was doing 3 episodes of 3 different things a week, too much. Not feeling fresh topic, not feeling fresh people, not wanting to do it. So took a little bit of a break, and y'all, these are gonna now switch to every other week. So I'm thinking if that feels good for me, it's gonna feel good for all of you too. At least I hope so. So for this bi-monthly series, I have with me my Stephanie's a lot to me. I'm with Stephanie Chesson. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Stephanie and I, we're in one of those fun partnerships where we have worn a lot of hats together, and not all relationships are able to do that. You can't do that with everyone, and it's always a really special gift and a treat when you can. And I'll share a little bit more about Stephanie in just a minute. But for anyone who might be returning to this, thanks for being here. And if you're new, this is a series that I started doing last summer where I was really trying to decide how I could use my platform just to share people. I know so many amazing people out there who are living a bold life. And what I love about the series is guests share anything from it was saying no to a really massive leap. And I think that's the thing, that boldness comes in all different shapes and sizes and packages, much like people. And, most of us are doing a lot more bold things than we give ourselves credit for. So I hope that this show lets you see in your own life where you are doing it. I hope it inspires you. I hope it empowers you. And I really believe that when people share a snippet of their journey and when we bear witness to it, it's healing. It's healing. We're just a great big mirror for one another. And so, that's the point of these. And, again, Stephanie is many things to me. And a Charlotte native, Stephanie works in the realms of photography, evolutionary astrology, Terry. I was looking at tarot and Reiki, and my brain fused them together. So
Stephanie, put them together. I love it.
That's
it's
what
a new
your
word.
combo is now called. It's called Terry. So y'all, Stephanie offers Terry, tarot, Reiki, and organic nutrition. And y'all, I still have more to read, but I just have to say, if anyone is seeking that, it's really cool to be in a space with someone where they take a tarot read and they infuse your astrological chart. It's just so personal, and it's amazing. It's a huge, huge, huge staple in my own life. A lot of you watching this have heard that because I've sent you Stephanie. And her current iteration of photography includes corporate work, personal client work, and her own personal work. And Stephanie is creating her own tarot deck from her photography. The deck is loosely called Bringing It Down Tarot to those of us on the earth plane. And wherever you're watching this episode, you'll have all the ways that you can follow Stephanie, watch Stephanie, and you'll see some of those beautiful shots of her tarot cards because she puts them in her Instagram. So you'll see all that there. It's a very visually appealing Instagram, like many people who are photographers. And during 2020, while much of the country was in lockdown and thus unable to get out to see their usual practitioners, she developed a distance session for her clients that combines the systems of Reiki, tarot, and astrology. And y'all, I gotta say, my first experience working with Stephanie in that capacity was remote. And I can always feel when Stephanie comes in, I just feel it. And then I slowly and slowly get more and more and more tired. And I can feel when she's starting to leave, because then I start to feel more perky. And then I get like the audio from her letting me know she's gone. So it's really, really cool. I actually don't know it any other way than that.
Oh, I know that. I mean, it might be interesting sometime to have you do the other,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And in 2021, the organic nutrition opportunity presented itself, and she jumped on board, seeing a way to serve the health of others and the well-being of our planet. Stephanie is passionate about all her work as well as this time in our planet's history. I love that. Um, when I was in college, I made the switch to organic. I'm 41 now, y'all. I made the switch to organic back when I was in my 20s. And I literally would choose to maybe not have money for other things in my life that I needed to eat organic food and help the planet. So I love that you're on this mission. It's a really important one. So thanks for that.
Oh, definitely. It's a way that you can serve in big ways, right? Because, and it's something we can all do together, right?
Yep.
If we all decided to eat organic, then there would be no reason to have sprays, right? To spray it. We wouldn't have to even work around it. The food would be cheaper.
Yeah,
Right.
I know. I love seeing that.
Yeah.
I get present too. Like I went chemical free with all my cleaning products and stuff also when I was in my 20s. And I think I had forgotten that so much of the population still wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see these conversations, because I'm like, oh, I preached about it a lot then and people were sick of me. So I stopped. And now people are getting loud again. And I'm like, oh, goody.
I'll say one thing on that too, like just even if you're walking on the floor, like our skin's our biggest organ, right? Like it's so huge. So it's these things that we don't think about, but once you like see it, then you can't unsee it. That's the beautiful thing, right? Yeah.
Right. I love this. And so y'all remember, these are organic conversations. I have no idea what Stephanie or I are going to talk about. I don't know what her bold move is going to be. So I get to kind of find this out with all of you. And so, Stephanie, you may have thought about this. You may know what you're going to say, or you may just make it all up in the moment. So I'm excited. But in this moment, when you imagine all of the bold moves you've made, from the micro ones to the macro ones, what is it that you are feeling called to share with our audience in this moment? What resonates for you?
Yeah, I thought about that, and I did really quickly on this too. I barely, like I kind of like to be in the moment, but it struck me that I've known people because I started working for myself after working for another photographer for 4 years. But I did that very safely. I think you and I might have some similarities like that, very Capricornian style in a way, right? Of like, okay, I'm now making more money than I'm making working for this guy. So I'll go out on my own, but I'll manage my money every week. So I know that I'm making this amount. And if I don't, I'll go do an assisting job for somebody, right? That's how I started. Yeah. So it's very linear in a lot of ways, which is really funny because I'm not really a linear person, but it's how I was conditioned and being brought up, right? And so I've had a lot of people, and I can't even imagine those 4 years was the only time other than like little summer jobs and stuff that I ever worked for anybody else. So I can't really imagine doing that, right? Like ever since then, I opened up my own business and everything's all my own businesses, right?
Yeah.
And so people think that's bold, but I've never thought anything of it. I dated a guy at one point for a very brief time, but he was an attorney and he was like, I mean, how do you know when your money's coming in? And I kind of wanted to go, how do you know when your money's coming in? Right? Like it looks like things like will support us, but we don't know when something changes. So it's never felt like a bold move to me. It just was, right? And it was what I wanted to do. But the biggest bold move I probably made is and that was a lot in 2020, was to stop feeling like it was on my shoulders, that I had to do this, and to literally just trust whatever word anybody uses, the divine, God, universe, trust, and go, I'm just going to work with your inspiration. And if I'm inspired, then that's the way that I'm going. And I'm going to check in often to make sure where I'm putting my energies are where they need to go, right? And it's tough. Your head wants to go, like that happened last year in 2020. My head wanted to go into these places of, like if I did this many of this, like since photography was kind of out in 2020, if I did this many Reiki, tarot, astrology, how many would I need to pay the bills? And what that does is it gets you up here in the sphere type state,
Yeah.
and you're out of the creative state, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, that doesn't feel good. And so I was like, what if I just trust?
Yep.
And it was such an interesting thing last year to watch my bank account stay steady or grow during a time. I mean, my accountant was like, I don't know exactly what happened here, because like, you didn't
Yeah.
make a ton of money, but at the same time, everything's holding steady, right? Way to go. You turned something around, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love everything you said, because it sounds like when you first left the rat race, it was done in a very linear kind of way. And I really understand your process, right? Like with the accountant thing, people said the same thing to me. And my response was, prior to doing this, I was laid off when I worked for a nonprofit. And when that happened, it really got me to see you're not safe working for someone else. It's an illusion. You can
Exactly.
get let go anytime.
Yep.
And I've actually felt a lot safer in a weird way working for myself. So I get that. And so then what it sounds like for you is in 2020, you're still self-employed, you're still working for self, but the bold thing that shifted was it started to become more non-linear. And literally, like the big things that people have been driving through on this show, I've been noticing this episode after episode after episode. It's all coming down to trust. I'm noticing there's a theme here. Every single person is bringing in trust. And it sounds like for you, it started to become a co-creation with the divine, which I love. And so y'all like really, really get this. You might not understand it, but just listen. Because what I'm also present to is when I'm in too much action and I work too hard, I'm basically telling the universe, F off. I don't need you. I can do it all on my own. I'm not going to leave any space for your magic. F you. And
Right. Yeah. My
right.
guys have been working with me too. Like if I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about things that like, oh my gosh, like I need to get back to gym and I need to do this. And they're like, well, you're not trusting, are you? So when I started doing the Reiki distance, I couldn't tell people in the moment what was going on, and I had to remember it. And that can get you in that shower moment where you're like, I can't write it down and da da da. And now I'm just kind of like, if it's important, then they'll give it back to me, right? Like it'll come back in at the end. If it's not important, it doesn't matter, right? They don't need to hear it. And
Yeah.
it gives so much more grace, like, but it's every single moment, isn't it? And it's this pulling out these old wiring that we have, right? Picturing this
Yeah.
old building where you're just yanking these wires.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you all, as you can hear just from this first part of the conversation, you can hear that what we're talking about has been a practice for each of us. And it didn't just happen, right? Like we are trained in this society to think in a linear way, to act in a linear way, to create in a linear way. And we get to a certain point, I think, when we are doing transformational work or whatnot, to where we just start to see at some point thing we want next isn't going to happen if we try to do it linearly.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I think it's huge right now too, that we create our own mind reality, and we're very cognizant of it. It's a nice responsibility for each person on the planet, because I mean, I'd sometimes just ask to give it up. Like I'm kind of like, I seem to be in a stuck place. Like I'm giving it up to you, right? Like, please give me with a new perspective, because we do get like that, right? And but
Yep.
it's up to us to watch it and change it, right?
That's actually a practice that I pulled from the last read you gave me, is to ask for support and shifting perspectives. And I'm just being so blessed with these brilliant downloads but the downloads are only coming when I acknowledge my biorhythms. And where the downloads have come from is taking more than just one day over the past week or so and scrapping my entire plan. A couple of times, y'all, I've had to ask other people to support me with this. Can we cancel today? I am not in a space where I feel like it's even healthy to do this. And I don't do stuff like that much, right? So people want to support that. And I'm trying to model the work that I ask people to do. But the downloads I've gotten from this have only come because I've been willing to just put everything down and be in a space of complete and utter nothingness.
Can I say something about that you'll like too? And I'm going to talk a little bit of astrology, but I'm going to explain it super quick. Anybody listening, don't get caught up in Saturn or Uranus, but we're having a square with this freedom, liberation, right? All year long. And it will be an orb next year. It's just not as potent next year. And the status quo and the way we have been conditioned, right?
Yeah.
And so there's tension there, but that's what I love squares in a chart, because that's tension, but you're creating this new form as you bring it in, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, like Saturn is the integration. You get these downloads, Uranus, right? And then and I don't mean that they're shocking, but when you know something all of a sudden that you didn't know before, and it just came in like a lightning bolt, right? Then there's some times that it has to integrate, and especially into the body, because the body tends to be the last thing that comes aligned. It's a little slower process there, right?
Yep. Yep. I love that. So, yep.
I love what you're doing, right? Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah.
Now's the time to work with this energy. I love that. And so for the next question, you might have already kind of spoken to it a little bit. So you might repeat yourself if you want, you might kind of expand, but for most of us, and the bold move that you really shared was, more around kind of creating from that nonlinear place, which is a damn bold move in my opinion. But for most of us, there's kind of like a push come to shove moment, or moments where we're like, it's got to shift right now. There's no other way. So was there a push come to shove moment for you, or moments where you were like, here it is, we've got to make this move now, we just have to?
I would say mine has been building over time. And I had, when I went and got my Reiki, master Reiki, I was a one-on-one with a girl one day, and she's like, I get this vision of you just running straight into a brick wall over and over again. I was like, I do that. I totally do that. Right. And when I was younger, I could will anything I wanted to happen, got a super strong will. But, this is where I'll use the birth chart too. I've got a thing there where you can tell in my chart that in the past, I haven't always trusted the divine, right? I haven't put my will in alignment with divine will. Yeah. And it's a piece that I really need to bring in. And when I've known that for a while, but I kept having to work with it and see it in new ways, right? It's consciousness levels. Every time you change one thing, another thing changes. But it just got to a point where it's like, you're literally exhausted from, these places where our soul has met limitations. You get literally exhausted with this stuff, right? Like, just help me somehow get out of this rut, right? And so it was a slow building thing, but I would say that it really came to head more in 2020, but in a very grace kind of way, right? Like, there wasn't a chance to do anything else. I'm going to give a quick shout out to one of my biggest teachers, which is Paul Selig, who is a channeler, and doing some of his work has brought a lot more grace in my life. I don't have to have these changes that are more cataclysmic, right? Like they're a little bit more graceful and easeful. Does that answer that well? Or okay.
Yeah. Well, and I love too that you were given that reflection, because I think very often when people reflect how they see it going for us, it's powerful to get that, right? Like, it reminds me of a reflection I got where, I am a very free spirit deep within there, but I also have had a lot of survival crap that's kept me from that.
Yeah.
And I get more free and more free the longer I do the work. But I was at one of my leadership trainings out in California, and I had like my fun like sequin pants on, and they called my ass out. Basically, the reflection was, compensation on the outside because I wasn't able to really feel that within, and I really wanted to feel that within.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, y'all nailed it.
It's
But
nice to have those too, though. And I was doing something with somebody last night, and we were talking about a bluntness, right? Sometimes, and I'm like, I need those teachers once in a while. I need those teachers.
right?
It's this bad, right? No, seriously. And the next day, I had the grace of having a read with another girl who said, "Why do you lock yourself up? Why do you pretend like you're this little thing when you're this big thing, right?" And so it was another way of saying it that gave a little bit more grace in there. But I did need that,
Yep. Well, and
like when you
this is
said it, I
why,
was like, I know that's tiring, right?
this is why, whether it's coaching or something else,
Yeah,
people need an objective third party. Y'all, friends and family don't tend to work so well a lot of the time. One, they're not going to say it to you. Two, you ain't going to listen.
yeah,
So there's a gift very often when someone who's an unattached third party can give us a love slap. It tends to be, for anyone who's listening and wondering why, the science of it is the nervous system needs to get jarred off its course to be willing to say, oh, maybe it's time to entertain doing this differently, even though I don't know how. So
exactly.
it's actually a technique. So and I love that you got that. And so for you, Stephanie, it sounds like her reflection, a brick wall, and your push that came to shove was, and I think this is very true for a lot of us, y'all, if you are tired all the time, look at that, right? You might need blood work. You might need to recreate your life. You might need a diet change. I don't know what it is, but exhaustion is not the norm. This society has made it the norm. It's not the norm, right? It's not the norm. And it sounds like for you, like the big push that came to shove, which was true for so many, 2020 was just a big old invitation giver.
It took away a lot of things to give you a lot of space to create new things, right?
Yep. And
And
it's funny because me over here, I just kept plowing through and creating from the same space and didn't realize it. And so now, I'm kind of doing what a lot of people did during 2020. And I'm like, I'm chilling.
well, I wanted to say real quick though, too, like we all get it different ways, because I saw so many people doing different things last year. But for me, the minute that it came in, I was like, oh, well, just in 2 weeks, I just see $50,000 that went out the door. Right. But I was also deeply excited that I didn't have to do this, because I wasn't excited about doing it. Right. The work I was going to do. And I just heard spirit say to me, when were you going to make this Reiki tarot astrology thing real? Right. When were you going to do it? You were just doing it on the side every once in a while when somebody wanted something, right?
Yep. Yep.
When were you going to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And you all, too, like, I just feel called to throw this in. Maybe it's going to be the perfect thing for someone to hear. But, when we are talking about living a bold life, making bold moves, exhaustion, a huge lesson that I've been learning, because I'm very passionate and I've got lots of ideas and I download a lot. I'm really learning that sometimes my human has to tell my soul, no,
Yeah.
not now. I don't have all the energy for all of that right now. And I guess I just had this idea that, oh, if it comes from the divine, I'm meant to do all of it right now. And so my downloads were actually causing exhaustion for me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. No, I think that is true. Like you can go turn down the volume some, right? Like,
Yeah,
or turn down the
yeah.
water faucet a little bit, right? I need it.
Yes, you all, when you're
Yeah.
listening, if you've got all these bold moves you want to make, our invitation is, you don't have to do it right away, and you don't have to do it all at once, and you can actually say no to the invitations you're getting from the divine. It's okay.
Right. And we're here for, like, depending on what people believe, and I honor all systems, right? But I believe we just keep evolving, right? And so we're not ever done. So there's
Right.
no hurry, right? It's just like enjoy the process, and
Yep.
you have free will to do whatever you want to do.
Yep.
It's such a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And you can't get it wrong, right? When you're off path, your own path, right?
So I don't know why I felt so called to throw that in, but I'm going to trust that somebody who's going to watch this needed to hear that message.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, because you don't get out there overnight, and there is no race, and it's beautiful wherever we all are. There's a really big learning thing. I love that, because I
Yep.
do think it's really I'm sorry, I hope I'm not going off too much, but I think that it's really tough for people to look at people that have been doing spiritual work for a while and really digging and seeking and
Yeah.
go, well, I can't ever do that because they're that far over there or whatever.
Yeah.
We're not as far as you think we are. We've incorporated it more.
Yeah.
And I don't like I've seen people turn things around that I couldn't even believe how quickly they'd have one Reiki session and they're like living off of that 2 years later. People are all moving at the speed they need to and get things when they need to. So don't ever feel like intimidated to start. Is that kind of where you were getting a little bit too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Stephanie, especially I love your bold move, because I think the one you really focused on is, it takes some practice to get to the point to be able to make a move like that. And why what I know to be true is, those of us who are living what I would say is a bold life, making consistent bold moves, part of how we keep making, because some people might see a leap, like, oh no, I think you quitting your job was the bigger and bolder one. But I would actually say, I think going more non-linear is the bigger and bolder one, because that takes a deeper level of practice and mastery to be able to do. And so the question I love to ask is, for all of us to keep moving and being bold and practicing, there is a formula per se that we need to be following to some degree. And that's where we bring in the structure a little bit, right? To root us. It could be like you mentioned, it could be like, oh, well, I need Reiki on me to do it, or I need to eat organic nutrition to do it, right? Stuff like that. So for you to be able to keep getting these breakthroughs, to be able to keep getting those more challenging ones, because really the trust that those are the challenging ones, right? A lot of us can go quit a job, but to like trust and create from a new way, that's where it gets tough.
Mhm.
And this could change seasonally, right? So if you feel called to just share a couple of things, what's true for you now, wherever you feel called to go. But I'm imagining there's things you do.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing is making a ritual around something is really, really important. Like before this call, I attune my house to the natures that are outside, right? So that I feel more aligned with nature. Jen already knows I'm sitting on a grounding mat, which attunes me to the outdoor frequencies. But I also do a quick little Reiki. And when I say this, anybody can do this through intention, but I just go through my body and go, I want to bring the divine into this space, because anytime I'm speaking, I want that to be more divinely guided. So all that is really, really huge. But one thing I found out from an Akashic Records read and another read, which people can look up, called Gene Keys, which I really love, is part of my path is to step into the unknown. Everybody has a different thing, right? And so when we know these things about ourselves, when we get reflections from different types of things, and it helps, like, I'm still working on my reactions, right? Things come in and you want to go, right. And, clamp down more, constrict the body, instead of going, we were just talking about this the other day of like, a trigger sets off and you just open up instead of shut down. Right. But that's a mastery level, right? You're not going to get it, because it's an in the moment thing, right? But some of that stuff is so huge for me right now, of just like knowing I'm supposed to be in the unknown. I'm not supposed to be figuring out what comes next, what the next pattern is. And those type things help huge.
And Stephanie, I want to recap some of the stuff you said, just to embellish on it. But for anyone who's watching that doesn't know, would you mind briefly explaining what an Akashic record is?
Oh yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Because I was wondering if I was getting a little bit too off right there.
Some people will definitely know, but I bet there's some people watching who would love to know what that means, and could be another tool for someone.
They're so awesome, right? And anybody can shout out to me or Jen if you need somebody, right? Like, do you probably know people that do Akashic records too, right?
I would probably check in with you.
Cool, cool. It is. We all have these records from all of our existences, and it's a very, very loving place. It's like our own library, and we can
I love
go
that.
there ourselves if we want to, which I have done. I like to use a teacher with me because sometimes I need to get out of the way, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Right. And so when you go into that space, first there's a feel to that space. And second of all, that is a place where me as a soul is known intimately, and my whole process, all the things that I've ever been through, all the things that I'm still working on. So what great information to have, because we're not just a collective from this moment in time that we're on earth. It's at this point in time, right? As a whole. So did that sum it up pretty well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And so y'all, like, just notice too how when Stephanie shared ritual, right? Maybe you take routine and you swap it out for ritual if you're a spiritual person, or even not, what would make it more sacred? Because that's a huge context shift right there. Nature, most of my people say nature. Stephanie and I were just talking. I was like, it's only going to be in the low 80s today. Our house stays cool. I've got my windows open so I can be on the computer today. So let me know if it gets too loud. So totally inviting in the divine, y'all. It can go a really long way to just invite in guides, divine, whatever your languaging is for that.
Magic, right? It's magic.
Yeah, yeah. And I love too that for you, because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't think of continuously stepping into the unknown as a self-care type of a practice. But if that is part of the work for you to do, resisting it could create a lot of breakdown. So I love that, because I think a lot of people might not think of that, but if that is part of what you're here to do, it is self-care to be honoring your path.
Exactly.
That's
Right.
fun. I haven't heard that one before, and that's a fun way to give people, I think, a new direction to look. So I love that you shared that one. And so you see, y'all, like that's the beauty of this. Everyone on this show is doing something, but as you can hear, it's honoring their belief system, it's honoring their biorhythm, it might be honoring the season. Make it your own. I can't tell you how many people who've done, like, I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm not an expert in it, but I know enough to weave it into my work a little bit. And I can't tell you how many people have gotten so much power with self-care rituals from learning their Ayurvedic doshas and stuff like that. They're like, oh, I can't stick to my plan because it's terrible for me. I'm like, I know it is. So thank you for sharing what's true for you. It's permission giving.
I think that's so big, and I appreciate you saying that too, because I'm a little bit more out there, because I do Reiki tarot astrology is a little bit more,
Yeah.
niche. But this stuff you can look up. You can look up human design. You can look up gene keys. You can get a lot for free, or $13 or something, right?
Yep.
And find out and see if it resonates with you, right? And it gives you thoughts. And I've had that message before, but it takes seeing it a lot of ways till you go, oh, right. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much out there, but it's not all for us, right? So don't need to be overwhelmed. Most of it's not for you. You've got your little chunk.
Yeah. If you hear it in the beginning, if you hear it 3 times, it's for you. Then as you get more practice, you'll start knowing first time, sometimes second for sure, right?
Maybe it shifts. I was doing one of my other series, Coaching Misunderstood, where I'm trying to educate people on what coaching is. And I was telling my guest, Ryan, if anyone watching this wants to watch that, y'all, that was one with me and Ryan Hall about, I think self-love or something like that. But I was telling him now, very interestingly, I have someone who helps me into what I'm in need of. But a lot of my practices now aren't even really supporting the human as much. I'm not in a space where I'm really getting much body work or much acupuncture at all. It's more energetic stuff that I'm needing right now. So it's really interesting to see how my human's kind of like, I'm good with a lot of that, but energetically, you need a lot of that. So fascinating.
Exactly.
Fascinating. So yeah, it can shift, y'all. Um, and so, Stephanie, this is one where we never really know for sure. We just kind of make our best guess. But back when you started getting that invitation in 2020, or maybe before, but 2020 was when you decided to move. You had that reflection of the brick wall. You were very present to your exhaustion. And then 2020 just makes this invitation. If you did not take the invitation and start really moving on this more nonlinear path, and nothing changed, right? And you were still going. Where do you think in this moment you might be right now with all of this stuff we've been talking about?
Yeah. And I'm even going to say one thing real quick on that is like in 2017, I started seeing things shift. I mean, I didn't care to do these things that
Mm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on with me? Like I have business to do and I don't want to do it. Right.
Yeah, yep.
But you see also, guys, I didn't go right in, right? Like it took a while, right? And sometimes you think, oh, it's just this or it's that. I mean, I did know right away, but it just took me a while. But I would be really frustrated, I bet, right now, right? I have a lot of fire and air in my chart. So if you think about fire and air as elements, what does it do? It goes up, right? I would probably be very, very frustrated. And I heard a quote recently. It's somewhere else, so it's not mine. It's from a guy that does coaching. So I wish I could remember his name right this minute. But turning frustration into fascination, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then that invites magic. And so, yeah, if I hadn't have done this, I would be exhausted and be feeling like this. I would be feeling like I'm on this cycle. Like I always think of like the hamsters, right? On the hamster wheel and I can't get off, right? And so that would have been the way I was living my life. And I would say that it would be pretty mundane. What I've noticed now is if I'm sitting in a space with somebody, it's a sacred space, right? And when you see their light bulb come on, when you see something shift for them, when you think, oh, when somebody thinks I've been the problem the whole entire time, and then they realize they're just hanging out with people that don't believe in them, and all they need to do is shift that so that they believe that, you know what I mean? It's so simple sometimes to see people get in those spaces. It turns me on. It's so excited to go, okay, cool, we're getting somewhere, right? And I get somewhere every time I see that. I'm learning through every single person.
Yeah, yeah. So you all, again, Stephanie's best guess is frustrated, exhausted, in a cycle, and mundane. And some of y'all might be thinking, like, well, what's so bad about that? But frustration, the way they posed it in my first coaching leadership training, was that frustration is actually anger turned inward. So if you can imagine, if we're turning anger inward on ourselves, that is part of what leads to all the disease you see around us. It leads to all the people you see where you're like, I don't want to get old. We don't want to get old because we have a horrible image given to us of aging, right? And this stuff we're talking about is part of it. And being in the cycle, y'all, part of the reason why, and you might be one of them, and if you are, no judgment, just sharing to give you a place to look. A lot of the reason why people won't go on to do the work and get support is you ride a cycle. And so you're like, I want to get support. This is terrible. It sucks. What happens then is you drop into the part of your cycle where you elevate up and you're like, it's not so bad. It's going to be fine. It's shifted. I'm fine. But you're inevitably always, if you haven't gotten off the pattern, you're going to get back on it. And most people, rather than get the support to get off it, you're going to keep riding it around, going from it's fine, it's terrible, it's fine, it's terrible. Fuck that. I don't want to live my life like that. Y'all can, but fuck that.
I so agree. That is a great way of saying it, right? Yep, totally.
And that's why, like, and you can see people do it. It's like the patterns gotcha. And in coaching, to paint a picture, if anyone can't quite get it, they were working on a breakthrough with me and I couldn't freaking see it. 15 people reflecting it and I couldn't see it. And they were like, baby, can we give you a way to look at it? And I was like, yeah. They were like, where you're playing right now, you've only got access to two colors, black or white. They were like, you're a freaking magical, glittery rainbow unicorn. That's not for you. And I was like, oh, Over here, I'm only getting each side of the coin. And they were like, you don't want that coin. You want to be over here. And it's just a whole nother land. And so that's a way to look at cycles, y'all, if you haven't heard it that way. It gets you out of a black and white world into a world with glitter and sequins and sparkles and rainbows.
From duality to magic,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for sharing that, because what you shared there might not sound horrible to some, but what we know is that goes on to create horrible circumstances in your life, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Just not vibrant.
Mm-mm. One foot in the, and I don't mean this like this way, but there's at certain times, I'm 53, so like there's certain times in our life when we get to more maturity, and we can really put one foot in the grave if we decide to.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
and when I hear somebody go, I don't know if I like it or not, I just do it because it's what I've always done. I'd be like, oh, look at that, right?
yeah, right.
Right, look at that. And it is tough stuff to do, but you don't do it all in one fell swoop usually, right? That's a little bit more cataclysmic. You just start making, follow that joy, follow the joy. It can be just putting a color that you like in the window where you wash the dishes, right? And
Exactly, exactly. I love that. And so, Stephanie, you have already shared so much wisdom, so much gold. And so, for this next question, you may want to share something you already shared and just drive it home again. Or there may be something completely new that's channeling through you. So, if you were to leave these amazing beings who've been watching this, whether it's the whole thing or part of it, um, is there one last piece of sage wisdom that you would like to leave these amazing souls with?
it is just that last thing of follow the joy. I think that authenticity is the biggest thing, and we're afraid to be authentic because we feel like people might not love us if we're authentic, right? But that the more that we really understand that these places that possibly we have been said, oh, like that's weird when you do that, or whatever kind of thing, those are the places we really want to dig in. And what makes it weird is because we might feel weird about it in the beginning,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so we're off tune a little bit, right?
yeah,
But the more and more we just go, we come into our values, right? That is so huge on this. Like, what are my values? Let me cut away things that don't matter anymore. But my biggest favorite one is still follow the joy. Starts with a vase in your kitchen, possibly, right? It starts with like, oh, I don't really like my front yard, and I think I'm going to change that up. Or, my couch doesn't look so good, I want to make that prettier. Start with like, or a pretty candle, and just keep making joy part of your practice. If that's to go play outside, whatever that is for you, it will lead to your authentic self, I think.
it's a loud truck out there now. So I'm like, all right, go wind them down. It's okay, y'all. But y'all, what I really want to just drive home for the one thing Stephanie said there is, notice Stephanie said, follow the joy, not the happiness. Joy is a timeless way of being. Happiness is fleeting. So we're following these timeless ways of being, because being is going to drive thought, word, emotion, behavior, all of it. Feelings won't as much. So follow the joy. That's very different than follow the happiness. So I love that you said that. Stephanie, thank you so much for being so giving and so amazing, and just bringing to this conversation what only you could bring.
Thank you for having me. I love how you integrate everything. You're so good at that. So
Thank
thank you.
you. It's a skill of mine. I'm learning that I really have. And so you all, whatever platform you're watching this on, the links to follow Stephanie if you want to check out her photography. She does reads for like new moons, full moons, all that stuff. I'm going to have all of those there. If you want to reach out to her, connect with her, say hello, ask questions, do any business with her, that'll all be there too. And I always ask, please, if you are watching this, and there is anyone you think of, any face you see, it might be a message that they need to see this. I have I have heard from people when they've watched some of these episodes, they've heard the thing they've needed to, and it's gone on to give them permission or invitations to do huge things. So, that's the intention. So please share with anyone that you think it might support. That's why we're doing this. It's what we're here for.
I love that.
And I will see all of you not next week, but in 2 weeks, because that is me making bold moves and honoring my biorhythm and my flow versus saying, oh, it's supposed to be a weekly series. Yeah, it was, didn't work. So now it's not. Boom. It can be as easy as that, right?
I love it.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop recording now and say goodbye to my beautiful guest. You all have an amazing time. And even if you're in it right now, remember the amazingness will come back. It always does. Just remember it's coming back.